Sure, my phone's on silent. I got onion skins,
We're live.
black pepper tea.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the Newark Museum of Art's Community Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration presented by Horizon Foundation for New Jersey. This has always been a great day at the museum, and while we can't be there physically, we are so happy to be here digitally and virtually with you this year. We want to thank you for joining us. This is the first live program of the day, and we have so many great more things coming up, which I will tease at the end of the session. If you're watching on Zoom, please feel free to use the Q&A or chat feature to chat along with us. Tell us where you're from, what you're making, what is inspiring you today. And then also, if you're on Facebook, we do see you. Thank you for joining and welcome. Use your comments in the, ask questions in the comment box below the screen. So today, it's my honor to present the activity, and we are going to be joined by Adebunmi Gbadebo, who is a visual artist based in Newark, New Jersey, and she's going to be joining us as we create an art activity inspired by the short film Hair Love. Adebunmi Gbadebo is a visual artist based in Newark, and she creates sculptures, paintings, prints, and paper using black hair. She rejects traditional art materials and uses hair to connect her work to her people and their histories. Her work is in the permanent collection of the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art, the Minneapolis Institute of Art, and the Minnesota Museum of American Art. Her work has been presented in numerous exhibitions in the United States, Asia, and Europe. So welcome, Adebunmi. How are you? Oh, you're muted.
Hello.
Welcome.
It's like no matter how long we live in this virtual world, sometimes we just forget these little things like unmuting. But like I said, thank you for having me today. Thanks for the introduction. I'm really excited to do this activity with you today, Kirsten.
Yeah, so excited. And for those who don't know, Adebunmi used to be a Newark Museum of Art educator with us before she started her art career, and she is now represented by Claire Oliver Gallery in Harlem, New York. So we're so glad to have you back with us, the team back together. And so happy that you all can join us on Facebook and Zoom. So without further ado, why don't we get started today? Everyone in the chat, hello and welcome. So excited to see your enthusiasm. So you can advance the slide.
Okay. So, So I'll start here at what kind of is the umbrella of what we're talking about today. Not only is this a special day because this is Martin Luther King celebration at the Newark Museum, and this is celebrating his legacy. But specifically with this activity, we're going to be talking about hair love, our love for our hair. And although we won't be playing the video, I just wanted to briefly kind of talk about this short animation movie, Hair Love. So it's about a little girl, as you could see, who is inspired to look her best for her mother. So she looks up different hairstyles on YouTube. And I was even inspired today by one of the styles that she wanted to wear, like this Bantu knot mohawk for her mother. And she struggles to get her hair perfect and look beautiful. And her father steps in to assist her. And you know, her hair even becomes animated as it's like fighting her dad in the comb. I don't know how many of you at home have the struggle and like sometimes anxiety of pain at getting your hair done. But through that process, she learns to embrace it and to be gentle with her hair, which kind of creates this love for her hair. And her father helps her get into this gorgeous style, and she goes to the hospital and wears her hair in this beautiful style for her mother who lost her hair because she's battling illness and cancer. Um, but you know, I think one of the things that I gleaned from watching this movie is just to be gentle with yourself and to love yourself. And this little girl did it through her hair. So segueing into my work, um, I think it was about 6 years ago when I made a decision back in 2015. So this is one of my earlier works where I made a decision that I wasn't going to use traditional materials, that I was going to embrace a material that I felt was connected to me, into my history and my culture, a material that was rooted in pride for myself. And especially in the Black community, that is our hair. You know, our hair is so connected to all these things. And then our hair is our ancestry, it carries our DNA. So it became a really interesting way and a material to talk about all these things um, through a material that everyone has. So this is a piece where I actually took hair that I gathered from barbershops and salons and I sewed it to canvas. Instead of paint, I used hair. And this piece was called Black Gold. Um, and this is another earlier piece, Am I Still Dreadful? Which I took hair and I felted it and I made it into this abstracted form. And you could see it's very kinky and you could see the texture. And it was my way of kind of posing that question, you know, why do we call our hair or hair like this dread locks? You know, there's nothing dreadful about our hair. And it was just the way to pose that question and create this new dialogue of our relationship and even how we talk about our hair. Um, I'm gonna just quickly go through the slides. This is another piece that I use, and this was the first time I used color. And just like you'll see in the activity we'll do later, um, this is still not a traditional material. I used hair dye that you could find in a beauty supply store for the color. And I was really interested in the color blue in this piece because as I learned about my family's history, I learned that my family was enslaved on an indigo plantation. Indigo is the plant that makes the color blue. So I wanted to talk about my ancestry and my family's history and their not so good history, but our beginnings in this country through this color and through our hair. Um, Here's another picture or piece that I made where I took hair and I pressed it down into a sheet of paper. And I printed an image of my family. So I like to call this series a double portrait, or where you have not only this representational portrait of my family. So this is my great great uncle and my grandparents and my great great grandmother in this image on the wedding day. Um, but even the hair, even the surface that makes the paper is like another type of portrait because, like I said, our hair is us. So there's like this abstracted portrait on top of the portrait that I printed on here. Just some other works that I did where I took hair and I embedded cotton and indigo and denim jeans um, into a sheet of paper and to talk about my history. So I guess, and I think one cool thing about what I've done in my practice and what we'll do today is a lot of times when we think of art, we think it has to be, you have to have paint or you have to have all the materials that you buy in an art supply store. But I get these materials from people sending me their hair or going to barbershops. So art could be created out of untraditional or unconventional materials, and it could be a way, and you could use those materials to talk about who you are. And I do it to talk about who I am, um, and just my love for our hair, our culture, and our history. So here's another piece with the detail. And I think that's it for my slide. And so I guess, Kirsten, do you want to talk about what we'll be doing today, and then we'll get into it?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your work. As someone who's been able to see your work, whoop, there goes my headphones. As someone who's been able to see your work in person, these images really don't do it justice. It really is so fabulous. The vividness of it, and I love how you're talking about using untraditional materials and like thinking outside the box with your practice, and what art can really be and what we use art for. So with that being said, we do have a little bit of some questions coming in the chat regarding your work. Someone is curious, how long does the average piece of yours take to make?
I get this question a lot, and I always like wonder how I should answer it, because like the making of the actual piece, whether say like if it's a piece of, if it's a sheet, that may take a couple of hours, but then when you think of in full process, the process to just have enough hair to make a work could take months sometimes. I remember when the pandemic hit and barbershops were closed, my supply of hair was, and then a lot of people weren't cutting their hair. It was like this term like COVID fro, So really it makes my process sometimes very long or very short, because everything starts with my community. My process doesn't start with me just in my studio. It starts with me going out into my community and my local barbershops and hair salons, or meeting people at a Starbucks or grocery store where they are giving me their hair. And that usually comes along with the story. And then there's this other process of just researching the histories that I'm talking about. So I guess I don't know if that directly answers your question. It's like a quick, slow process, depending on, depending on where in the process you're talking about, like the making the work, or even, collecting the supplies.
And I think that's just so true for so much art, waiting for that creativity to strike. Sometimes it's a really painful process, and sometimes the art comes together really quickly. So with that being said, thank you everyone for your questions. We are going to continue chatting with Adebunmi as we make some art ourselves. So inspired by the film and all about love, and Dr. King's message all about love today, and also with using non-traditional materials, we are going to be making portraits today, using whatever you have in your house. Art can be made by literally using anything. So I'm going to be switching over my camera just to show you some of the supplies that I'm going to be using today. If you are going to be making art and joining with us, type in the chat, what are you making? What are you using for your materials? So I'm going to switch over my camera here, and Bumi, feel free to jump on in with the things that you're going to be making your art out of. Okay. But as you guys can see here, I have a lot of different things. I have cardboard, I have paint markers, I have coffee, the number one important thing, just kidding, for art. I have fabric, I have yarn. And so today we're going to be making something inspired by love and self-love. And I already have something here that I started making, just to show you the possibilities of something you could make. So thinking about our hair and what makes it special, and kind of where we get our strength from, sometimes we think hair is strength. And I love how Bumi is given hair and gifted hair, and that was like a thing back in the olden day. If you loved someone, you'd give them a little lock of hair. So her work really is centered around this love. So with that being said, why don't we get started? I always like to start by making the background. This background is inspired by an artist we have on view at the museum. Her name is Alma Woodsey Thomas. She makes these really beautiful paintings that kind of look like mosaics. And so I use my paint to use a little bit of brush strokes. But if you don't have paint, Get creative. Think outside the box. Use non-traditional materials.
Yeah.
Boom. Do
So
you
I
want to
could
tell us
share.
what do you have?
Yeah, so like you saw in my presentation, um, traditional materials always, like, I think there's something really cool in looking at a material like hair, or what do I have in my kitchen, and thinking about how can I connect that to what I'm trying to do? How can I make art for it? And I'm actually at a friend's house. I'm not in my studio or at home. So I had to look around her house and figure out, well, what can I make art out of? So she had a bunch of these, what, I don't even know what they're called, when you put the nickels and the pennies in it. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, this could be an interesting way. I don't know what I'll use it for, but maybe, like we think about money or wealth. And so maybe I'll use this to make some of my hair and talk about like the wealth and the power that is in my locks and my hair. I have ground pepper. I like to cook with this, but I'm like, maybe I could use this for texture.
A
I
little
have
seasoning.
some, yeah, I have some onion skins. And onion skins are really pretty because they kind of look like delicate paper. I have some nail polish, some duct tape. I have some peppermint tea bag. I think I'm gonna cut that open and use the texture of the tea to kind of depict the texture of my own hair. I have some sprinkles because my friend Ashley bakes sometimes. I have some string that goes to a mask, but I may use it as a ribbon or something. So I'm just kind of getting, I have a Trader Joe's brown paper bag, and I thought, there is a history of how the the paper bag was used as a form of um, just as a negative form of separating people into groups of color. So I thought this could be not only a historical kind of material, but an interesting way to kind of make me. And I have some markers. So, like Kirsten and I are saying, you don't have to have paint or brushes or even markers. Look around your kitchen or look around your bathroom or in your bedroom and think of what interesting scissors, things that you can make that represent you, that like a brown paper bag have like historical meaning, symbolic meaning, or just like really funky colors.
Yes, I love it. And I want to give a shout out to everyone in the chat telling us what they're making and what they're using. So some people are getting really creative. I love to see it. Using markers and paper clips, paper, pencils, crayons, and scissors. Ooh, slime. That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Sketchbooks, glitter, construction paper, more pencils, blue, pink, and yellow yarn. I also have some yellow yarn here. Ooh, I'm excited to see what we're going to do with all of this. Okay, so why don't we get started? I'm going to start working on my background. I'm not really sure what I want to do yet. So if you guys have any suggestions for me, please, I'd love to hear it. That's the other great thing about art is that it develops, and it's nice to get feedback from other people and kind of help grow your work. And as we're going to be making art, we're going to be asking Bumi more questions about her work. I think it's really cool here that we have an actual artist. Like a lot of times going through museums, you look at the wall label and it's just a name, right? We don't really realize that these are like actual living people with really rich histories and perspectives. So you have your opportunity to really pick her brain. She's a local New Jersey person, and so it's so great to have her with us today. So I'm going to switch over my camera again and get ready for some art making. Boomy, we do have some questions in the chat that I did want to highlight as we get started. Just scrolling back up. Okay, we have a question. Do you have an idea for a piece before you get the hair, or is the hair an inspiration for what you end up doing with the piece? Oh, that's really interesting. What comes first, the chicken or the egg when it comes to your work?
I think earlier on when I started using hair, I would let the hair kind of lead me and inspire me to think about what I wanted to make. If I got locks, um, there are certain things that I could do with locks that I can't do with hair from a barber shop, or there's certain things I could do from a woman who's giving me hair from a big chop that I can't do with locks. So the hair would really lead me in the direction not only of what I was going to make, but the process in which I would do that. But now in my career, I've been focusing my work a lot on the history of a particular plantation, True Blue Plantation, where my family worked on as enslaved people. And so now I'm really focused on this history, and I use a lot of materials now, like cotton and indigo, and also black hair, to think of how I could talk about this history. Sometimes some hair is really dense and thick, so that gives my work more texture or depth, like thickness. So I guess I go in between both, but right now I would say the idea comes first, and then the idea informs the materials.
Thank you. Another question for you from the chat. How many hair art pieces did you make?
Whoa. So, huh. With the work I'm doing now, I make work in multiples. So one installation could have maybe 30 sheets of paper, and I may have done maybe 6 of those installations. So I've done like over 100 individual sheets of hair paper. Um, huh, let's just say a lot.
And that's great. And are there any pieces that you had to start over, or like what is, when you first start on a piece, how does it work? Like, do you usually nail it on the first try? Does it kind of take you some experimenting? How do you stay motivated when things like don't, necessarily go how you envisioned?
Yeah, I think over time I learned that failure is a major part of my process. And what I mean by that is, like I take hair and I make it into paper that I could print on. And I had to do a lot of trial and error to figure out, how do you get hair and print images on it, or how do you get hair and come and dye it in indigo and add denim to it. So experimentation is really welcome in my process. And through experimentation, a lot of times I make things and they fail. And even with my series that I showed you, where I printed my family's portrait on hair, the last time I tried to do a piece like that, the paper didn't come out right, because if the surface is too textured, I can't print anything on it. So even now, things that I have done successfully, I'll try it again and it's failed. And I've learned to embrace the failure as a part of the process. But then when I do succeed and something beautiful comes out of that, it's rewarding. And it's motivating. So even right now, I'm cutting out the Trader Joe's. I know this is not a promotion, although I do love them. But I'm just experimenting with materials, and we'll see what I make. But I think even part of what we're doing today is kind of how I approach my work. I go in with an idea. I go in with the history that grounds the work I make. I go in with a set of materials, but then I just play.
I love that, the concept that art is a lot of just like playing and experimenting and like working through what you're feeling. So I want to check back into the chat. It sounds like we have a lot of art going on, everyone. People are making a sign, a dress. Someone's writing that they just want to draw what you feel about hair. I think that's so great. So much about art is what we feel and what we think and our perspectives. I want you guys to think about a moment that you had with your hair, like an intimate moment. Was it a frustrating moment where, you know, your hair was not cooperating for the day, or was it a nice moment? You know, I have fond memories. I played soccer growing up, and before every single game, my mom would French braid my hair into 2 braids. And I remembered I called them game braids, and I could not play unless my hair was done because it was like a superstition thing. Bumi, do you have any like fond memories with your hair journey?
Oh, well, speaking of hair journey, I've had cornrows, I've had perm, I've had weave, I've had press and curl. I used to every picture day I would have my mom take me to my beautician, and she would do cornrows in the front and Shirley temple curls in the back. And that was like my go-to picture day hairstyle. And as you see now, I even have locks, which for me was a really interesting part of my journey. But being an artist who receives hair, I was getting a lot of donations. I'm using oh my, I was getting a lot of donations of locks, and it kind of just gave me a different perspective of locks and how beautiful they are and the diversity of them. So one day I went in the shower and I wet my fro. And of course, some of you guys know with black hair, my hair shrunk like a little afro. And eventually that little afro turned into clumps, and those clumps turned into parts, and those parts turned into little tangled whatever, and eventually it grew out to hair. And that's how I have the hair that I have now. But I guess one funny like kind of story, I used to go over my grandparents' house, and my grandmother would always do my hair in really cool styles. And, you know, oh, she was so rough, and I would be like, you know, and she would do my hair. And when I was done, I would go downstairs to where my grandpa, he always watched TV in the den downstairs. And he would always be like, "Who are you? Who is this girl?" And I thought I just got a lot of joy from that. He would always act like I was some new person because I had this new hairstyle. And it was always a joy to get through the horror of my grandma doing my hair and then be met with my grandfather with his high energy and spirit. Always like, "What happened? You transformed. Who is this person? Where's my granddaughter?" So I remember that. That was a really special memory I think I could think of. And my mom, I don't have any memories of my mom doing my hair because she couldn't even put a regular braid. She was just horrible. She was not like the father in Hair Story
Oh my
at
gosh.
all.
Well, you know, in her defense, she did not have YouTube. I mean, YouTube is such a resource nowadays. Thank you for sharing those memories. It's so touching. It's like, I love that that's such a human thing. No matter what culture you come from, we all have these like intimate moments, like with our bodies and with our families, and just like all these little things, you know, how we interpret, how we style ourselves, and, you know, portray our culture to the world. I want to bounce on back to the chat. We're popping off over here. This is great. So people are Doing some bead work, drawing some hair. Some people are saying that they're a better designer than drawer. That's totally okay. You know, we can definitely do sculptures. This is a little bit of both, right? A little bit of drawing, a little bit of sculpting. Do what you enjoy doing. You know, art isn't supposed to be stressful. Someone from Houston, hey Texas, sending me love from New Jersey, is telling us a little bit of some art made of hair by an artist. So we're gonna have to check that out later. Thanks for sharing. Ooh, interesting question from Stacy and Mira. This is two-part. I'm adding these together. Do you ever use your own hair for projects? That's part one. And part two, do you ever incorporate any of the names of the people whose hair you use in your works?
So there's only two pieces I ever made that actually have my hair in them. One is a piece where I took different lines of women. So like when I mean lines of women, I mean like a grandmother, her daughter, and her grandchildren. That piece has my hair and my mother's hair in it. But maybe it was about 5 different lines of women of different generations. And I threaded their hair and it made a 40-foot line that I usually install hanging from the ceiling of the gallery space, and it cascades onto the floor. So my hair was in that piece. And then there was another piece where I took hair and made it into paper, and I printed my grandmother, my great grandmother on my father's side. I printed her image on that, and then sewn onto her image, I sewed my hair and my sister's hair. So that piece kind of represents the 3 generation of women, starting with my grandmother, which is represented through the print, and then my sister and I. So those, I guess it's like unfortunate or fortunately, I don't know how you want to look at it, but now that I have locks, I don't really get a lot of shedding. So I like to think of it as I contribute to my work by making it.
Your blood
and
goes into it.
yeah, no, sometimes I'll prick my finger with sewing, and is that nasty? And I figure like one day maybe someone will look and be like, oh, her DNA is on this piece. And I don't incorporate people's names directly on the piece because my work is abstract. So it means it's not a representation or a literal image of someone. I represent people in abstract ways. But but I do incorporate their names in how I title the work. So maybe, like if you look at a painting or any art piece, it will have the title, the year, the size, and the materials. For me, the way I incorporate who this hair is from is through the materials. So I'll say, um, am I Still Dreadful? And then the materials, I would say Andrea Johnson's locks. So that's how I incorporate who gave me the work. Or sometimes I'll say, from this barbershop. Um, so that's kind of ways I acknowledge where the hair came from and by who.
Thank you. Yeah, and I love that you brought up that piece with your grandparents, because we do have a question from Facebook on that specific one. So did you print the portrait of your family on hair on top of paper or with hair on top of paper? Or did you use white ink? They would love to hear more about this piece.
Yeah, so that piece where I made hair into paper, like the actual hair is the paper. There is no traditional, paper like this in the work. I took hair that I got from a barbershop, and I blended it down to almost like a mush. It almost looked like a really weird smoothie. Um, and I took that mush and I laid it as thin as possible over a screen, and it dried. And when it dried, I was able to peel the the thin um, layer of the hair off the screen, and it formed a sheet. So now, instead of printing on paper or canvas, I'm printing directly on our bodies, on our hair. Um, so I turned hair into paper, and I've been able to silk screen. So silk screen is just another process of printing that uses a screen. And I silk screen those images directly onto here. And that's how I did it. And that was a process that I had to kind of figure out on my own because, you know, sometimes with different Black histories, a lot of that information is lost, um, especially when you go 100 years and 200 years back. So for me, turning hair into paper was like a different way or interesting way for me to create a new archive or almost like a textbook or a history paper abstractly of who we are as people. So that's what I try and do when I do that series and specifically. Right now I'm taking tape and I'm like balling it up to make locks.
Wait, that does look like box. That's amazing. See, literally anything can be art. I love that. It sounds like, oops, someone's making a flower. You're inspiring me. I think I might add a flower to my piece too. Thanks for the idea. So we have, oh, and we have pets with a lot of hair. Yes, can confirm. Pets do have a lot of hair. Hey, get some of that pet hair in that work. Oops, someone is done. If you are done with your work, feel free to take a picture. If you're a child and you have a grown-up that can help you, take a picture of it, upload it to Facebook or Instagram and tag us. We would love to see what you guys are creating. As time is winding down, I encourage you to keep asking away. We're going to ask Bumi all the questions we can until the time is up. We do have an interesting question that came in. And I think, Bumi, this will be really interesting, not only given your expertise, but also your travels. You've traveled the world recently. So this person has been to Africa several times where there is no phone or internet in a very remote part of the country. And the women in the village and their hairstyles are identical to the ones here in the United States. They're just asking, how do you think that's possible? Is there some kind of mystical or supernatural connection between the ways we style our hairs and, seeing the similarities between here and parts of Africa? And you were just in Nigeria, so I would love to hear what it was like going back to Nigeria and seeing and like reckoning that experience being a Nigerian American yourself.
Yeah, so I guess like one through line when you see how can we go to like Newark, New Jersey or Maplewood or Morristown or Brooklyn and see women or men wearing styles that are in other continents or back in Africa. So I think one way historically we see like through the diaspora and through unfortunately like through histories like slavery, right? So you have Africans that were dispersed through slavery or through the diaspora through all over the world. And a lot of times we retained and maintained our history and our culture through the things that we did. So even though we may not still be in parts of Africa, we may have held on to our culture through the caring of our hair, through how we expressed ourselves through music, through how we expressed ourselves through dance. And I think sometimes even those histories stay with us even unconsciously. I know a lot of times when I do talks, sometimes people bring up um, little like Black superstitions, you know, like if you cut your hair, burn it, or you know, burn it or get rid of it, or a bird could take your hair and make a nest and drive you crazy, or you know, or unexplained superstitions of, you know, my grandmother used to always burn my hair or flush my hair down the toilet when she did my hair, and those are connected to histories um, in different African like spiritual systems, that we understood the power and the spirit that lied in our hair. Um, so we were very protective over who touched it or who dealt with it. And those histories don't leave us because we leave those lands or those countries. They stay with us unconsciously or very intentionally and consciously, as our way of maintaining our history. So
Thank you. Yeah. You know, passing down that history, but also thinking too about how global the world is currently. And like, this is a great example right here, like right now, like seeing that we're able to just like share and like be in this little community on Zoom. We're not all like in Newark, New Jersey right now, but like we're across the world, learning and growing from one another and like reinforcing these things. So we have about time for one more question. Let's see. Oh, this is a great one. Have you ever created a piece with just one vivid hair color, like an artwork with just pink hair? Take it away.
I have done pieces with like one person's hair. Like I know in particular, like that piece that I showed, Am I Still Dreadful? That was one person's hair, and our hair was like this beautiful salt and pepper gray. Um, and then there's other works where like I get blonde hair, and so that introduces, because I mean, outside of me using blue, my colors are limited to what colors I get in the bags of donations I get, or the from the barbershop. So when I get blonde hair or gray hair, I've gotten green hair, I've gotten blue hair, I've gotten purple hair. That becomes a new, like almost like paint to my artist's palette. So I do, when I get those colors, I do use them in intentional ways, because I don't always get hair that are distinct colors. So it's really exciting when I do.
Yeah, thank you. And that's one of my favorite things in your work too, is just seeing like the different tones and even like curl types that come through and like how you're able to make them, and they like the little tiny coils like reach for each other, and they like it's just so cool. So thank you so much everyone for joining. I want to check back in, see how everyone's art project is turning out. Here's where mine is up to. If you want to take a little look. I've got some crazy hair. She needs to get a comb through it. But the fun thing about art is you can continue with it, really keep working on it. You know, art doesn't have to be like you sit down and finish it. You can definitely come back and revisit things. Boomy, how's your piece coming along?
I feel all the pressure because I am the artist, but I've been talking, so I'm a little distracted.
It's
But
all good.
here, let's. So I use the gold placemat as my background.
Oh, that
I
looks
did this
nice.
circle Trader Joe's bag as my skin. I used the onion skins as some, you know, really cute purple lipstick. And then I did the coin holders for my eyes, because I was thinking about Hair Love and the movie, and just thinking about um, like money as a kind of way of alluding to like um, wealth, and like just seeing, when you look in at yourself, or in the mirror, just seeing wealth and beauty. And then I used the tape as my locks. I used the string to a mask as a hair bow.
It looks
You know,
so pretty.
I don't think my gallery would necessarily show this in the next show, but it's cool for me.
It definitely looks great and is, you know, a little therapeutic experiment. So, with that being said, thank you everyone for joining. I can't wait to see all of your work. Tag us on social media at Newark Museum Art. Someone wrote into the chat they're titling their piece "Linked with Love." I love that, and that's what we're all about today: is the love. Thank you everyone for the compliments. You know, we try our best. Continue experimenting. And in that vein, I would like to tell you about the upcoming events we have going on today. Thank you again, Bumi, for being here. It was so much fun to get to work with you again. If you enjoyed this, please sign up for our other free art making session today at 12 noon. We're going to be decorating sneakers with a message. We also ask you to please consider donating to the Newark Museum of Art so we can continue to bring this virtual programming into your homes. We are dropping some links in the chat for you so that you can sign up for the rest of today's events. You can view our website, newarkmuseumart.org, for a whole list of things, including today's programming. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram. All of our programs are up on there. And later today, we have a music showcase exploring evolution of African American music. After that, we have a community project and discussion with Bria Goler. She was the artist who designed that beautiful piece of art that went viral with Kamala Harris's VP of her walking next to Ruby Bridges. And you can participate in the project. They're doing a community project, and you can have your art seen by this artist by using the link below or by finding it on our MLK Day website page. So we hope that you participate with us, continue engaging with us. Even though we can't be physically together, we love being able to engage with you in this virtual space. Highlight of my day. And that's all we have for today. We hope that you continue engaging with us. And once again, Bumi, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you so much for having us, and everyone who logged in today, thank you for making art with us. Happy MLK Day.